Not quite so many pictures of deer today, but still some fire pictures for sure. Well, we heard earlier today Wes talk about the Virginia Learn and Burn and this other increase of interest or use on prescribed or fires on private land. We've heard that several times here today. So we had an event this past year that is our first attempt in introducing some of this in Pennsylvania. So my job here today is just to kind of recap what happened, explain how that came about, what we did, how we got folks to there. And then once they were there, what we talked about and actually did on the ground, and then how we assessed that at the end to make decisions on moving forward. Is this something we want to continue to do here in Pennsylvania? Did we think it was valuable? Did it meet some of the objectives that the Fire Council had? And then if not, hey, let's adjust as necessary and move forward. So if you take a look at the Fire Council, and this is on our website, you can look at here, the objectives. They include things like providing a framework for communications relative to fire, to using fire, to teaching about fire. But one of the big things on here as well is, let's increase the use of fire that we have on private lands. There's a lot of fire going on in Pennsylvania now, certainly relative to what there was 10 years ago and 20 years ago. But still, most of this is occurring on our public lands. It's not a bad thing by any means. It's just now time. Let's take another step and be able to influence what we have on a private land perspective from this. Todd showed data yesterday on all the fires that we had in Pennsylvania last year and who was the agency that was ahead of them, and showed that the Game Commission burns more than anybody else. And very good that the Game Commission burns throughout the state. It's not just in certain regions. Whoops, I'm sorry. There we go. Around the state, which is great. But we said, you know what, from this now, let's be able to add to what's going on here on these public lands and be able to fill in some of this from a private land perspective as well. So from the council's perspective, yeah, there's some of the board members that are really interested in this, but it is not just us driving the program. Let's make sure that there is a desire by private landowners in Pennsylvania and an interest from them to want to go forward with it. So there's been Fire Council surveys, Penn State surveys that are taking a look at this survey and private landowners and saying, are you interested in this at all? Because if not, then we're not going to push this. We don't want to advance this. However, if you do want more of this or want to see these opportunities and want to learn more, then hey, we are the ones that can help advance this and bring this to you. This certainly helps all of the public land burning as well, because as more people understand fire, the use of fire, as more people see smoke in the air, it makes it less likely that they're going to call in or complain. If something happens in fire, gets away onto a neighboring landowner, if they're familiar with fire and the benefits of it, they're far less likely to try to sue the agency that was burning. So the ultimate thing here is that the more fire we have on the ground and the more people who understand the benefits of it and that it's okay and that the smoke is going to be there, then it just makes it better all across our network relative to managing habitat and using it for wildlife species or whatever the goals of that program may be. So we did these surveys and found out, you know what, there's tremendous interest by private landowners in Pennsylvania to do this. Some of this driven by the public land burning that's going on, and people see this and learn, oh, this is really cool, man. That's great there now. We would love to see it over here. Some of this driven by the academic institutions that talk about the benefits of fire. Some of it by state wildlife agencies, some of it by NGOs like the National Deer Association and others that talk about benefits of fire and how people can use that to enhance wildlife habitat or whatever the specific goals may be. So here in Pennsylvania today, the history is, we hear a lot more about it. We see a lot more about it. This is the next big opportunity to increase the use of it. So we hosted our first Learn and Burn. The Fire Council, it was on August 20th. And going to go through some of the layout, kind of what we did, what we talked about, and just share with you what the folks that day got to be. So it was approximately a 5-hour day. It ended up being longer than this because people wanted to hang around and ask questions later. But we hand invited people from about 25 different attendees, partly because we could have flooded this and probably had 50, 100 or more who wanted to come. But we said, you know what, for this first one, let's pick folks who, one, are from across the state, so we're not just in one area, but that it's people who we know want to use fire. It's not people who just want to come and see fire or maybe have no intention to ever use it, but let's get folks who are absolutely interested in using it, who want to learn how, and be able to come from members of the council who were there to be instructors. So this is what we did. This turned out to be in Tioga County. Actually, it was on my farm, long way from a lot of other places in Pennsylvania. We initially tried to do this in more in the south central or southeastern part of the state to be a little closer to many of the other fire council instructors and a bunch of interested landowners for a series of reasons that just didn't work out on there. So we shifted gears. We went to the north central part of the state for our first one, partly because now we had certainly an interested landowner who wanted to do it. There is a bunch of interest in and around where I live by private landowners, private land managers who wanted to do this. So we knew we easily would be able to get folks there. It's a long drive for some if you're not in the north central part of the state, but for the first time, this is what we did. We have a history of using fire on our place. We had a lot of things in place to make it a very safe situation and a very workable situation, particularly for the first one of these. And in part, we partly were developing the model that we want to use for these. So it was a good training ground or testing ground for it. So what we shared with the people who were coming is we said, hey, these are the type of things that we're going to show you today. And we'll cover, we'll talk about why we burn and the safety end, all these. And what Zach just showed you here, yeah, amazingly, a lot of these are the same thing because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We're drawing from experience of others. That stuff has been extremely successful. So we grab that stuff, let them know, hey, this is what we're going to be. But you see here in the bottom, this participation, this was the big part of it. We let folks know that, hey, if you're interested, you're going to get to carry a drip torch. If you don't want to, you don't have to by any means. We're not pushing onto it, but we want to provide this opportunity to you. We want you to see that, there are times that you can put fire in the ground and it'll go out. So many people who don't have any experience with this had the impression that you put fire down, and whoosh, everything's burned up, right? And everything's consumed all the way to the ground. But the reality of it is we want to show you, get it in your hand so you can see what happens. There are places that just absolutely will not burn. If your life depended on it, the fuel moisture is too high, conditions are right, it just won't burn. But then there's other places that it absolutely will. So if you want to carry a drip torch and do this, we encourage you to do that. And you absolutely will have that opportunity. So we started. We had some presentations inside. Everybody arrived ready to burn immediately, as you can imagine. But let's sit down inside first. We're going to go through a few presentations just to show you what is going to happen today and explain some of this, because we wanted to make sure that they understand, the reason for this and how we can use it. And that not every fire is the same, and not everybody has the same goals for that fire. It's not a one size fits all recipe. So Jenny, our chair, introduced it today. She welcomed everybody, explained what was going to happen and what was going to go on. Dr. Jesse Cry then took over and actually had a presentation, talked about, hey, here's fire history and the benefits of it, because we wanted people to have a little bit of a background to understand, all right, here's really what we're talking about. And hey, here's kind of the monumental effect of where we are today. We're not in Florida where they have been doing this for decades and decades, and every other neighbor does this. This is a big deal to be a part of what we're doing and to understand how this fits into Pennsylvania's use of fire over the last couple of decades. Gets done with that, then John Wakefield took over and talked to him about planning a fire. Hey, we want you to develop confidence to do this. We want you to continue to come and take more training so that you can do this on your place someday. And you know what? This is a big part of it. It's not just about, okay, the conditions seem right today, let's go burn. Here's all the pre-work that I need to do to plan for this. One, to make sure that I have areas set up that are appropriate to burn. Two, that I understand what conditions I can burn these under. Let me understand what the range, of wind speed is and relative humidity and fuel moisture and all of this, how this plays in, such that when you actually get to lighting a fire, you have the highest chance for success and the lowest chance to have something go awry. So we walk them through that. And then I talk to them about, okay, once you have jumped through all those hoops and it's actually a burn day, here's what we're actually going to do to implement that fire. And a little bit of getting ready for it, but mostly here's what's actually going to happen. And this part of it is, once we went through, we basically did the old teaching thing where, okay, we're going to tell you now how this whole thing is going to work. Then we're going to take you outside and actually go through all of that and make sure that, they had an understanding of what they were going to see in the field. We did on the board here first. So some of the stuff that we talked about quickly was, hey, here's why on this place, we are burning to enhance wildlife habitat. My neighbor may burn for entirely different reasons. Doesn't make him or her right or wrong. It's just you have to understand what the goals are. The goals for here and everything you're going to do today with fire is to enhance wildlife habitat. We talked to them about fire breaks. What are they? How do you create them? How do you use them? How do you make sure you have these in place? This is where the whole safety end starts. We talked to them about a test fire. What is it? Why do you do it? Where do you do it? How do you use this to make the decision on, do we go forward and actually light this fire or not? You know, there are times that you're all excited to do it and everything seems great and everything should line up, and you get to this part of it and it's not what you expect to happen, the behavior after that. And when you need to know to pull the plug, and you know what, it's just not right. I will come back, you know, tomorrow or when the conditions are right. Doesn't matter how excited you can be and how many people you have here to actually help you today. This is not like cutting wood where all of your buddies are here and you know what, and we're going to cut this winter's firewood today, regardless of if it snows, rains, or sunny. You know, burning's entirely different. It's all about the conditions. Then we talked to him about how we're going to actually start the fire. We're going to get out here. Here's the part of the field we're going to start at and why, right? We had kestrels, we had other things where we can talk to them about the relative humidity and how we monitored that throughout that day. Now, we only burned for a couple of hours, but they got to see how, man, if those clouds disappear and the sun comes out and suddenly that relative humidity starts dropping immediately, whoa, you know, I can immediately see change in some of that fire behavior. So we talked to them about those conditions, where within this, based on the wind within this field, you know, we would actually start the fire, what a black line is and how that helps us and why that's important. And then we talked to them about actually burning the unit out and the different firing techniques. So explained what a head fire was, how you would use it, when or when not you may use it. We talked to them about flank fires and made sure they understood this terminology, or if we're out here seeing this, what's going on, the different fire effects, you know, for each of these. We talked to them about point source fires, ring fires, etc. And under appropriate conditions, when you should consider using some of these or not. And maybe some that you should never consider in most cases to be able to use. So in this case, you know, what you can expect the fire to do based on what firing technique you were using and what the variables were that you were burning under. And as much as anything, we wanted to make sure that they, you know, that they realize that you put all of this together, and then as you start this, these things, the environmental variables can change during the course of that fire. So what you have going on here may need to change, you know, to make sure that you stay within safe parameters. One of the things that's very nice about this, and as I talked yesterday about the scale of burning, I remember days, you know, when we were burning 500, 1,000 or bigger burn units, and the variables are so different among the fuels within there. One of the really nice things about burning much smaller scale is at least you are limiting the number of different variables within any of those burn units. So which is very helpful. So because of that, the pieces that we burn under this were very small. The idea wasn't to have these huge burns and let these people check off a list, you know, yeah, I burned X number of acres today, but it was actually to learn all of these different pieces so that they could start, you know, to be able to do this, certainly at small scales first, maybe never progress from small scales, but at least understand what these are. And then we moved into safety so that they understood what was actually going on here, where they should or should not be during a burn, how to communicate during this, you know, were we communicating with walkie-talkies or other ways, just so that everybody stayed safe. Now, we want to show them that, hey, you know, this is not something that you need to be scared to death of. You don't need to be scared of fire, but you absolutely have to respect it. We want you to be able to use this. We want you to be able to know how to navigate safely through this. And here's what we expect as instructors today, where you will be or not be during the course of what we actually have going on. We talked about then making sure that when we're done, you know, we're going to ensure the fire's out. You know, you see the flames, this is a lot of fun, but as soon as we get this part of it done, hey, we're not done here at all. You know, let's go, we're still responsible for what just happened. We're going to go out and ensure that, you know, in this case, you know, we show you a field here so you can kind of see what's going on, but let's go make sure this fire actually is out. Let's make sure there's not snags that still have, you know, embers in them, or let's go look at the fire breaks and make sure there's not something just on the other side. You know, that's a big part of this. And then one of the things that I'm really happy about is we talked a bunch about assessing the fire after the fact. So it's not just about burning this and walking away. Let's get out there and see what actually happened. You went into this with a plan. You went in understanding what the appropriate variables to burn under. You knew what the variables were while we were burning, what the temperature and the humidity and all of that was. So you knew at least a little bit about what to expect based on the fuels. Let's get out there and see if that actually happened on the ground, if you met your goals relative to what you were trying to do. And the cool thing about it is, let's do this such that you go into it expecting what's going to happen, but with these variables in this exact area, let's see, did that actually happen? So that the next time you go to burn, you know, you had that knowledge base. Okay, the last time I burned a situation that was similar to this, with similar fuels, under these conditions, this is about what we got. Did it end up being as hot as you wanted it to be? Or was it too hot? So use that. So the next time you go out, you can be even a little bit better at what you're doing to achieve your objectives. So I'm a big fan of assessing things after the fact and learning from them, regardless of how good something went. There's always something that can be learned from it that you use the next time. So we made sure that we incorporated that into this. Then we moved on to the equipment. This is the cool part because this is when John let everybody drive the truck around and use the hoses. That is not true. He did not let them do that, but there was a lot of interest in the truck and what it had. We talked to him here about scale and, the necessary equipment based on what you were doing. If you were burning a lot of it, acres, this unit is big, you may need big units. And I know when I was in Florida, when those burn units were big, almost every one of them, we had numerous dozers and fire plows and tanker trucks and all kinds of stuff. Well, today, the scale that I often burn out of my place and what we had, in addition to John having this, were much smaller tools. And Pat and Stephen from the Nature Conservancy went through all the stuff that we had so they understood how we would use backpack leaf blowers and drip torches and rakes and hose and, flaps and all of this and backpack water packs or something we could put in the back of our Polaris Ranger. This is the things that we had here. Hey, these are the equipment that you need to have. We may not need to have that really nice pumper truck, but, if you're going to be doing this, you better have a water source. You may not need a lot more than something you can carry on your back or something you can put in the back of a UTV, but you need to have this stuff here. And now that it's here, let's make sure you understand how to use it. Here's what the burn fuel is a mixture of. Here's why it's that mixture. And here's how you so much as even light your drip torch. So we just walked them through all of this stuff. So they felt very comfortable with it. And so that, they would be a little safer once they got out there, or certainly if they take this home with them. Then we took them to the field. The burn unit we made the decision, we're not going to burn in woods, partly because it's August and it would be very difficult. So we said, let's burn in a field. So we had this early successional vegetation field that we managed, and we picked out numerous spots from this that we were going to go ahead and burn. So this is what they were walking into, something, a field that looked similar to this, had disc fire breaks around it, for around most of it anyway, disc fire breaks around the majority of it with a road on the other side. We also had some green fire breaks. What we're looking at here is actually this field from a different angle where we have a disc fire break along the side. And since it was August, even this vegetation, even with last year's, the drought that we had, how much of that is going to burn all that green stuff? Most of that wouldn't burn if your life depended on it, even that day. So about 3 weeks prior to the event, we went in, my kids and I, and sprayed several areas within this, such that the brown area that you're seeing are sprayed with glyphosate so that we would have something that was dead that would be able to burn. The nice thing is then and now is we've added one more safety factor in it. We have a sea of green around everything we were going to burn that day. So, it's one additional safety factor or level to make sure that, hey, fire's going to stay where we want it to. And, we're going to be able to have a good description of what's going to happen here with these folks. So we had disc fire breaks that road and a sea of green around each of the different pieces that we wanted to burn. Then we took them to the field and actually burned. The first piece that we did, actually, the instructors burned this and let the students just watch. But we had them right up there, right on the line with us, explained everything. Okay, we just talked about this in class to you, but here's what's going to happen out here in the field now. We're going to do this. Here's the humidity. We understand this. Where's the wind blowing? So where should we light our test fire? How do we start this unit out? So we did this. And the nice thing with the 25 people we invited, we ended up with 23 of the 25 in attendance. It was a very high instructor to student ratio. So, and we told them, look, ask lots of questions all the way through this, whatever's going on, let us give you these teaching opportunities. And they took advantage of it. Man, I think it's sensitive. So this is the end of the field that we started with. And you can see where the gentleman in the Wrangler shirt is standing is an area actually that is adjacent to what we were burning that I had burned off about a month before we got there, partly because we knew some of the people coming weren't the most mobile people in the world. So we made sure that this is an area, one, it adds another level of safety because we have this huge black area right beside where we're burning with a fire break on the other side. But we made it really easy for people to walk right out there. One gentleman brought a chair with him. He would get right beside where we're burning, sit in his chair to observe everything. We wanted them to be right there. We didn't want them, across the hall or 100 yards away watching. We want them right on there so you can see what's going on grab a dip torch or drip torch, see the effects of the wind, the fire, et cetera. So this was all very much hands-on and right up front and center. After we burned that off, now we moved to another area and we had strips that I had sprayed. We had spots I had sprayed. So we had lots of different opportunities. And now here we go. Who wants the drip torch for the first time? Of course, that's one of those deals that, everybody just kind of looks at each other like, I don't want to be the first one. But as soon as the first person says yes, then every time after that, it's like, who's next? And like everybody's hands in the air, like they're all in. They want to do this. The nice thing about this is, it's one-on-one with an instructor and all the classes right there. And they got to do this time and time and time again. Hey, where's the wind? Where do we like to test fire? Where do we start this? There was a slight bit of elevation where we were in here. So they got to see a little bit of the effects of, fire coming uphill a little bit, but it was all very personal to them and lots of opportunities to start a new fire. Each one of these tended to be pretty small, but you get to do one and everybody gets to see what happened. Then you get to do one and everybody gets to see it. So it was a tremendous learning opportunity for them over and over again to see what was going on. And there were numerous places that we burned. We burned these strips, we burned these spots, we had all kinds of stuff. And you could really feel as we went through from the attendees, the first one, they're like, yeah, we should start it over there. And by the last one, everybody knows we should start it here. Here's why, here's what we should expect. So it turned out to be very good from that end. One of the things that we liked the most about it is that there was a lot of one-on-one teaching opportunities. You ended up with people standing there and asking about this or that. But as soon as we got, into the third, fourth, fifth, or sixth spot that we burned, you started seeing some separation where the people coming up and grabbing one of the instructors being like, okay, like I've seen this 3 times now. Do you always get this? Or, hey, what about this? Or what if we would have started the fire over there? So it was very hands-on, as I said, but it also was very personable for everybody there to really feel like, okay, I've seen this a number of times. I'm starting to develop a little understanding of what is going on here and comfortable enough with each of the instructors to be able to ask something. There was a lot of people that day that they got to put a drip torch in their hand for the first time. And I obviously, between the talk I gave yesterday and today, you can see I like to joke with people and I like some humor. And so I would ask them, like, pretty powerful to hold that, isn't it? And they would smile, be like, yeah, it is. Like, it really is. Like, they can feel it. They're all excited. Like, like this is a difference. This is something I may run a chainsaw or I may run a sprayer or something, but there's something different about having a drip torch in your hand. Comes with a lot of responsibilities, and we want to make sure they understand that, but it's a pretty powerful tool. They also got to see a lot of fire behavior. It wasn't a long time that we burned, but there were times, and you could see from the pictures, a lot of the blue skies that we had, but there was cloudy periods where it would go over a little bit. The sun would come out and the sun would go away, and, fire would kind of die down a little bit. So they got to understand some of even if you have all the variables right when you start it, man, a lot of things change during the course of the fire. So we had people on the backside of the fire actually putting fire out with backpack sprayers so they could see, all right, here's what I can expect from a suppression end, given what we have for fuel moistures and all this. So we tried to give them the full gamut of that. Then once we got done, we assessed the fire. Let's walk through here and just take a look at what we have. They explained the difference between white ash on the ground and black ash on the ground. Let's look at the vegetation that's here. Amazingly, some of them say, I just thought it would all be consumed and it'd all be flat. And realize, that's not the case, based on what happened, a bunch of the goldenrod that was in here. Yeah, we burned the leaves off, but, all the stalks are still there. They're dead, but they're still there. We talked about the autumn olive or the honeysuckle that we burned that, we don't have to consume all of that to the ground, and we don't want to do that. We just need to get that cambium layer to about 145 degrees and that tree's dead, particularly late in the growing season like this when all those reserves are up out of the roots. So there was a lot of peripheral things like that they got to see going through that definitely will help them, if they burn in the future, but also understanding from a wildlife end. And then we assessed the attendees. And you could see with the thumbs up here and the big old smile, it was a pretty positive day. And we asked them through this stuff as we're out there, like, hey, are you getting what you wanted to out of this? Are you learning? Do you like this? It was tons of smiles, tons of camaraderie, among the attendees and with instructors. So that part was great. But we took one more step with that and followed up with Jesse and Melissa Crock provided a survey. So we actually got to survey each of the attendees that were there, because let's get something that we can actually measure with regard to what we're doing. We have lots of pictures of smiles and that, but let's get somebody to sit down and just run through some questions so that we knew as instructors, hey, did we hit what we wanted to do? Did we achieve what we came in here to do? What we found from that was that the participants traveled from throughout Pennsylvania. Many of the places that were in either Tioga or Potter County were, they were pretty close by, but we had people drive 4 to 5 hours to get there. So, which starts showing you just some of the interest. If they're going that far on a Saturday morning to be able to do this, there is a bunch of interest. We learned that their primary objective was to learn more about fire, like how to use it. And in many cases, it was, how can I get this, to be able to do on my land? We learned that they strongly agreed that the program had an important impact on, on their perceived value of using fire as a land management tool. Average of 4.8 out of 5 on a scale of 1 to 5. So that was good. We were glad we hit those ideas with, them understanding the use of it, because then that also allows them to do a better job talking to their neighbors about it. If their neighbors see smoke, or their neighbors see that, they're burning at the Arboretum, or, on a game lands or whatever. So that's good. We learned that they felt that we provided a better understanding of fire, even if they had kind of a concept of what's going on. They learned with the presentations there about it. They had a more positive attitude about fire, which was very encouraging, especially since they came there with a positive attitude about fire. They weren't coming there to complain about it. They were there because they were interested, and were able to even elevate that a little more. And we found out that this was very important to me, that there was a perceived change in skills for their use of fire, which means, they came there wanting to learn how to use it. And what we showed them, or what they got to see, they felt, a little more confident in being able to do it. Most of them said, like, we're not going home and doing lightness by any means, but I would love to come to another one of these, because with another one, I think I would be confident enough, to actually be able to do this, or at least be within a community of people that I could get somebody to help me do this. So that was very important. Which all leads us to, hey, the council, was this a success? Are we going to do it again? How we do it? We feel it was an overwhelming success. We feel we had a pretty good agenda in how we ran things. We certainly learned things from it that we will tweak for the next one, but we already had the next one scheduled. Not all that far from here, actually, August of this year. So with a bunch more interest from people contacting us, hey, I saw about that, I read about that, I heard about that. How do I get involved? So that's good. That's the direction we want this to be going. So just east of State College this August, we'll host our 2nd annual Pennsylvania Learn and Burn. And we look to incorporate many of the things we had here at the first, but then also some of the stuff we learned, and then continue to grow this program as we go forward, just to help more people understand how we use this, what's going on in the state, and to teach them a little more about the use of fire, and that we can actually get this on some more lands here within Pennsylvania, and increase just more of the fire on our landscape. So with that, certainly appreciate everybody's attention to this. I was super proud to be a part of that thing. I look forward to being a part of the next one. And if folks are interested in attending one, hosting one, helping, being in it, whatever, definitely let somebody from the fire council know. Jenny, our chair, has spearheaded this from the beginning, has done a tremendous job getting us to where we are today. And I can tell you from the council, we're looking forward to doing more of these. That we were very encouraged by this. So if you'd like to be involved at any level of those, definitely get with one of us, because we'd love to hear from you. And we look forward to doing more of this going forward. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions about it. Yes, ma'am.
I was just curious, from the participants that you had, did they express, was it lack of knowledge, or also lack of materials that would prevent them from wanting to do a prescribed burn? Like, did they talk like relatively, was it not knowing a lot about how to do prescribed fire, or like not having the equipment or the money to maybe buy the equipment they needed?
Great question. Most of them came there with some understanding of the benefits of fire. Many of them were people who had or were interested in deer or enhancing wildlife habitat with fire. So they at least knew that, okay, yeah, this can be used and we know it's good, but we have no idea how to ever actually implement this on our place. So they came there wanting to learn how to be able to do it. And they certainly would know what a drip torch would look like. Almost none of them had ever even seen one in person, let alone touched one. So they knew the benefits, just did not know where to start with actually making it happen on their land. And so when they left, that last survey point that I showed you, yeah, they felt that they measured a change in their skill level of being able to do it. There was at least one that said, you know what, I definitely can do this. I know that I can. I will start very small in a very safe situation, but I at least feel confident enough now that I understand all that goes into it. They said, I'm going to feel way better if I can get some more training like this. And they want that training, which was encouraging to us, you know, as we try to make that available, to know that, yeah, there's a big interest out there from folks. So if we make it available there, we're going to fill the classes for sure. So I think that more than anything else, they just needed some a little more confidence and understanding how to actually do it. They want to do it. They just need to learn how.